Absolutely. And, still we get a lot of questions from people that, are, I only spoke about something on WhatsApp, but, somehow there's a case against me, or the state
Yeah.
has found out. And despite the messaging being encrypted. So why is that? And despite encryption, what are ways that law enforcement or governments can access your chats?
So I think one of the things that is often kept under wraps by the government is, as of right now, if you talk about the government of Pakistan, there's a number of technologies they do have access to that allows them to conduct pretty comprehensive surveillance. Um, and if you remember, a year or two ago, when we started really talking about the national firewall, which is essentially the web monitoring system that the PTA has had for a long time, which was being upgraded, as they say, more technology was introduced that essentially what it does is it also impacts things like WhatsApp. And how it impacts that is it slows down the platform. When it slows down the platform, what happens is images, videos, voice notes uh, cannot be easily accessed. So they would either you wouldn't be able to download it. If you can't download it, that means you can't really forward it. And that reduces the ability of things going viral. So we have to be aware of these sort of technologies. Now, the problem is that these technologies are not being acquired transparently, and there is no transparency by the government about them and what their capabilities are, how they are used, what legal authority do they have to use these things. Because surveillance in Pakistan can only be lawful under certain laws, like the Investigation of Fair Trial Act of 2013. But we live in a system where the legal and the extra legal um, live in some sort of different worlds. There has never been a warrant that we know of that has been obtained under the Investigation of Fair Trial Act. Yet we all know that surveillance is happening. So, why have we normalized the extra legal to such an extent? We have normalized audio recordings being leaked, which is unlawful surveillance, but we have normalized it. We have normalized it to the fact that we now, instead of taking privacy for granted, we take for granted that we are all probably under surveillance. And that is not a system, that is not a constitutional democracy system. So the state has the ability when people say, I spoke about it with someone on WhatsApp. Well, on their platform, when a message is sent to that other person and it is on their phone, then it is no longer encrypted. So if a phone is compromised and that technology does exist, then all your chats are compromised. If your phone is compromised, all your chats are compromised. Right? And I think that's the aspect that we need to be aware of. And then also, of course, we need to be aware of the fact that what we say often is being recorded by our phones, unless you specifically go way into your settings in Google and so on and try to turn it off. That's why when people say, I just spoke about something with a friend and suddenly I'm getting ads about it, there is a whole network that operates to be able to do that. It's not just what you say being recorded. They're looking at things like who is that data is then funneled by companies into the algorithm that serves you ads. Now, similar technology is now coming is Pegasus, which also exists, but there's a lot more technology that is now coming out.
Absolutely. And I think, what you described is the combination of metadata that enables governments to have all different information about you through WhatsApp other than messages, right? So that
Yes.
also includes what groups you're a part of, for
Yeah.
example, or what your story is on WhatsApp. And, like you mentioned, the IP address also gives out your location, what Wi-Fi connection you're connected to, or what data point where you're getting your internet data from. That's all available and not encrypted, and that's
Also,
why
I
I
would
think
say that your phone number is not encrypted, right?
exactly.
So, and a phone number is
So
linked to someone.
So it's an
Yeah.
identifier, right? Because especially now we have our SIMs and then our IMEI, our phones
Yes.
are also registered with the government. So in effect, you're not really private or secure, and that's why so many people offer Signal, the messaging app, as a better encrypted
Yeah.
alternative to WhatsApp because it's open source, not for profit, and it has disappearing messages in the sense that when you read it, it can also disappear, so it doesn't stay on your device. So when we look at all of this, the debate around privacy and security really comes to fore. And I think, Hassan, you've described it really well. That we need to be informed and know how this surveillance takes place, how the lack of encryption can then lead to different bad actors, governments, and companies accessing our messaging data, for example, on Instagram, and the cutoff date is in May. So after that, your messages are not encrypted anymore. So be careful what reels and memes you're sharing with your friends, because those are also
Yeah.
open to surveillance. But then also we talked about how there needs to be responsibility on parents and children, on how they ensure their safety and safe usage of social media and the internet and different applications. But then also you've described how companies make these decisions around encryption, and why governments want this access, right? And this tension of privacy and security then continues to exist. And in a national security heavy environment that we see around the world, security narratives are triumphing over safety, privacy, and encryption. So that's all from us today. Thank you very much for joining us, Hassan. And we'll be back with another episode of Digipod on Dawn News English next week. This is your host, Osama Khilji, signing out.